some huge challenges right now. Quick primer on three types of markets: developed, emerging, and the frontier market. If you don't know, developed markets are considered US, Japan, Europe. Their GDP growth is lower, single digits typically. In the emerging market, it's roughly defined as developing but not fully developed. That includes countries like the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and recently added South Africa. Many other markets are included in that. They were previously called the third world in the 80s. People didn't like that term. Investors will bet on them having higher GDP growth, typically 2 times or 3 times what the developed world has. China, for example, 2019, 6% growth. US in 2019, 2.1% growth. And of course, there's frontier markets. These are viewed as small, unstable, illiquid, generally risky. If you look at something like Kenya, Vietnam, those would fall into that category. Vietnam, 7% GDP growth in 2019 to the US is 2%. Sometimes people like to make bets on them. Here's a nice little chart for y'all to look at, and you can just see China versus Vietnam in the United States since the 80s. And so why is this all important? Well, the Wall Street Journal reported last week that EMs, the emerging markets, have been feeling massive pressure. We'll get to Sri Lanka in a moment. That's a frontier market, to be clear. But 3 things. Well, we've got probably a half dozen things going on. Let me just highlight maybe the top 5, and then I'll hand it off to the besties. You have high bond and loan yields. The debt rates are increasing in the emerging markets and frontier markets. Think what happens when you got a variable mortgage or you try to get a new mortgage. In the developing markets, the developing market investors have stopped investing in emerging markets and frontier markets, as you might suspect, during a downturn. And they're even pulling money out. Then you have surging inflation. We all know about that. And we're going to talk about inflation here in the US because we got the print this morning. And slowing growth. We've also talked about this for the last 6 months on the program. All these problems get exacerbated when economic growth slows, and it's slowing globally. And then finally, we have the potential issue of contagion. We don't know exactly what's going to happen when various countries are facing these challenges, although we did tell you here what would happen with the Ukraine. Shout out to Sachs and Freebird, fertilizer, wheat, oil, all that good stuff. And it's becoming very acute. Perhaps the canary in the coal mine is Sri Lanka. Breaking news, President Rajapaksa fled for the Maldives, and it's a state of emergency.